Wait, did someone just say $1 billion? It was Steve Jobs who once said, "We can only connect the dots looking backwards." I always pondered on that statement, actually fascinated by the truth that it holds. Like, why do we have to go through the struggle in order to make sense of it all? And then it hit me in my weird school of thoughts. Like, what if we could actually connect the dots, but going forward? What would that look like? What would that mean? I mean, we can all see the mistakes after we've made them. But what if we could see the mistakes before we make them? This is Windhoek, the capital city of Namibia. I call it home here, more specifically, our economic home. You see, we are all born with nothing, but with a mission to make our lives into something, in our small and big ways, but we all have a purpose. And this part right here, this is called hustlenomics. See, I understood very early that if I wanted to make it out in these streets, I needed to learn one priceless skill. A skill I could even use even if I was shipped into a foreign country. And that skill is selling. See, the mission was quite simple. Get X number of kilograms of produce from farmer A at X amount, deliver the produce to a consumption hub, aka the CBD, whether it's complexes, restaurants, resellers, and make my cut. Seems simple enough, right? So I set off to work. And then it hit me. The problem wasn't getting the job done. I had no problem getting an empty truck on its return leg back to Windhoek and making that transport company an extra buck, or convincing my business partner to store my produce in his cooler rooms at the nominal fee so I don't have to buy my own cooler rooms. The real problem, however, was consistency. What I didn't know was that the customer's number one need is consistency. Everything else comes after that. I was only concerned on price, freshness, and the fact that it's local when the customer's number one need is consistency. And there it was. I had stumbled upon the first dot. It takes me back to a time in Durban at Butcher Boys, just me and the boys. And one of my mentors taught me a principle I'll never forget. He said, a lady's number one need is consistency. If you give her that, you'll have a happy home. And if you don't, well, let's just say you'll have a very lonely life. It took me a while, but I finally managed to get pen to paper. I needed to dig deep to connect this dot. And then it dawned on me, there are two economies I deal with on a day-to-day basis. The production economy and the consumption economy. And they consistently interlink. But what do we really mean by this? Like, what do we really mean by production? And how is it connected to consumption? I mean, if it's really that simple, why can't the central bank just print more money to stimulate the economy, right? And then we have all the prosperity. And then my crazy mind asks, even if the central bank prints 100 billion, how does that money get into you and I's pocket? I don't see the central bank going, here's $1 billion for Tukwata, here's another $1 billion for Noshari, and here's $100 for Travolta. It just doesn't happen that way. So I dig even deeper. So when I'm back home, Kukwarudi, the production and consumption economies are quite interlinked. I mean, we the boys get into the beef production process to herd the cattle and the goats, and the girls get to the grain production process to pound mahangu. And at the end of the day, we all sit at one table to indulge in the consumption process. Happily ever after, right? But damn, as soon as I cross that border at Oshivelo, all those dynamics shift. On this side of the economy, everything has a price. Even the water I drink has a price. I mean, I go to pretty cool hangout spots and everything, so I'm not really saying that it's all that bad, but I needed to summarize my findings, and here's what I found. Most of the sovereign states apply a mixture of capitalist and socialist system. It's really to keep or try to keep everybody in the house happy or kinda happy. It's a big job and it's a pretty tricky job. So in that system, money flows in one or two ways, through government spending or through bank lending. Remember, it's only the central bank who can print money, and I look at them like a manufacturer, just like Coca-Cola. The guys who manufacture money. Maybe I should apply for a job there. Oh wait, I'm forgetting something. And that guy I'll be in 2025 challenged me to generate $1 billion. $1 billion! So anyways, money is only printed by the central bank, which in hindsight is a really good system. So the first leg, the central government, is very important because that's how money first gets into the system. So the government issues bonds to the central bank and the central bank issues money to the government, which the government then injects into the local economy through local tenders, which should circulate locally, ideally. And this is the socialist part of the system. The second part of the system is the capitalist side of the system, where true novelty prevails and survival of the fittest. This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is the side I find myself. You see, on this side, it's the market that decides. There are no votes, no kettle posts, or free handouts. One has to think smart on these streets, or else put their nose to the grindstone and hustle. The second part mainly uses credit. Just think of credit as the ability to take money from the future and spend it today, but I'll detail more in the coming episodes. Banks run this side of the system. Remember how I referred to the central bank as a manufacturer like Coca-Cola? Now think of commercial banks like Metro, the wholesalers of money. They get the money at repo rate, say 6.5%, and lend it out at prime rate, say 10.5%. So why is all of this important? Well, remember, all of us are born without money, and we are born into a world of production and consumption, where money is the facilitator. Remember how I crossed Oshivelo and the dynamics changed? I'm just trying to summarize my findings here. So yeah, so the commercial banks get a cut because they take the risk. The risk of those nasty people, the people who borrow money and never pay it back. Or the risk of those awesome Excel spreadsheets we engineer and present as our business plans. So the two sides all play a critical role. The central government spending pumps money into the system, and the commercial banks pump credit into the system, which lubricates the production and consumption process. And since the central bank is the heartbeat to the whole system, what then triggers them to start printing money to get it into you and I's hands? Cause truth be told, man, I just won my billion. I have an order for a 48 million euro yacht that needs delivery come 2025. I'm gonna have to get a bit technical into physics here, so just bear with me. So everything in the universe is energy, right? The food we eat, the jeans we wear, the atoms in the cars that we drive, the particles in the water that we drink, everything. And what we know about energy is it can neither be created nor be destroyed. It's merely transformed. An ice cube is heated, it turns into water. Water heated further turns into vapor. Vapor then cools, and then there's liquid. I'm gonna put energy at the top here. And on the left side, I'll put raw materials, conversion costs, and overhead costs. I'll continue to put finished goods here, and then followed by debtors, where the cycle is completed by putting cash here and the bank account here. I'm gonna maintain that this is a cycle which triggers the central bank to heat up its printers and start printing money. I'm also gonna show you how this cycle summarizes production and consumption. I don't care whether you call it construction, stock markets, banking, mining, call it whatever. In essence, we all wake up to do the same things each and every morning. We are all either producing or consuming every minute of the day. At the beginning of every value chain of any goods and service is raw materials being converted into finished goods, aka inventory. And at that point, the production process ends, and then the consumption process begins. And because it's finished goods, it's then taken to the marketplace. Remember when I got the produce from the farmers? We just had the luxury of nature turning one seed into a whole fruit. And that's the whole production process. You see, I then delivered the produce to the chef, who I then made out an invoice indicating that the produce now belongs to him and that he now owes me X amount of dollars that was payable in 3 working days before the next order. In this case, there was no cash involved, as African Basket's banking details were on the invoice and the money was paid in the bank no later than 3 days. You see, the chef then consumed my supply, but instead of him consuming it for his purpose, he consumed the supply as raw materials to start his own production process. Or say for instance, I'm a consultant. I take my mechanical and thinking energy and apply it to organizing a set of raw data into information, and in turn use a set of well-crafted algorithms in my head to understand that information so I can then present it to my client in a well-organized fashion. And on the process goes. You see, the process repeats itself religiously, and there's something magical that just happens every time the cycle completes. Say I bought the produce at $200 from the farmer. I paid $20 to transport the bag to Windhoek and then sell the bag at $300 to the chef. I just made $80 from thin air due to the fact that I did 80% of the task from my phone and laptop. Classic middleman, right? But I call it metamorphosis, cause now I have a happy farmer cause he's got a customer now. And the chef is also happy because he got fresh lemons. You see, the system works for whoever can turn the unuseful into useful, and the central bank happily prints the money. And there I had it, the very first dot I connected, the cycle where production meets consumption and sets into motion the most powerful machine known to humankind, the economic machine. And that's what I was missing when the chef dropped me. Because of my inconsistency, I couldn't see the interlinks. I couldn't see the impact on the chef's production and consumption cycle. So it was not very hard to see why he had dropped me. And I can't put the blame on the chef. No wonder the money tap dried up. I mean, the central bank can't just print money because of my need. They want my seed of production, to find something valuable to do to enhance somebody else's production and consumption cycle and consistently deliver on that, so we keep the economic machine in motion. And why is this economic machine important anyways? Well, simply put, unless you manufacture everything you consume, you need the system. And the system works for those who know how to work it. And again, we're all born with nothing, and we all come onto this earth wanting the same things, to contribute to the world in the best way that we can, and we do it through a system. It's the goose that lays the golden eggs, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously. Our collective behavior makes up the economic machine. Nothing happens in isolation. It's like by the laws of nature, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and it can be beautiful if we all know how to work it. But we all know human nature, right? We are all destined for different adventures. As for me, I just want my $1 billion, man. Provide my seed to the world so the central bank can authorize my billion. So yeah, join me in my series of videos as I share how I made $1 billion, documenting how I navigate through my own challenges and fight my fears. It was Marianne Williamson who said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure."